Hi, I'm Maria Thea Harris or Velo Sews on social media. Welcome back to Sew Organised Style podcast for Sober 50. Make sure you like and subscribe Sew Organised Style podcast on your podcast app and on YouTube. Well, I saw the outfit that you wore to Parliament the other night.
Yeah, I've got some other photos from that because I was MC at the Churchill Fellows dinner and I wore the same one again for the 63rd time now. So
Good on you. That's Jane Milburn OAM. It was Mary V. Morton and Jeanna Wigger who encouraged me to invite Jane onto the podcast today. Grab a cuppa to hear Jane's slow fashion and rural support story. Jane, welcome to Sew Organised Style podcast, and thank you for being here also for Sober 50.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here having a conversation with you, Maria.
That's wonderful. I'm really thankful that you've come onto the podcast. Are there a couple of things that you'd really like to touch on?
Well, I'd like to be able to talk about my Churchill Fellowship. We could talk a little bit about natural fibres. That's
Yep.
very much what my focus is. I guess the whole idea of us taking charge of our own wardrobe, individual action across a multiple level can create change. So that's really what I've been about for nearly 15 years now, demonstrating a different way of dressing. And there's lots of my slow clothing manifesto. That's really important because that's the 10 actions that we can take to reduce our material footprint. And one of them obviously would be sewing and making, which is your area, but there's lots of other ones as well. And it's probably worth broadening it out, just thinking more, buying quality, buying natural, having just a few that you love, reviving, adapting, salvaging.
Can I start with asking about where you started from in New Zealand?
Yes, I grew up on a sheep farm in New
Yep.
Zealand, so that's where my love of natural fibres came from. My family, my immediate family, moved to Australia when I was 11, so I went to school and university here. I studied ag science, which again affirmed my love of the natural fibres. My first proper job was as an ABC rural journalist, and then I worked as a journalist in other print media. Then I moved more into advocacy for farm groups, groups like AgForce, the Australian Banana Growers, and working on campaigns for them. I had the opportunity to do a leadership program because at one point I was president of the Rural Press Club. So I think it was that leadership training that enabled me to think about where I could contribute more, and particularly when our third child finished school and the imperative of earning money was not so severe, I could sort of follow my heart
Yep.
and work more to my values and also step into my authentic self. And this is where I returned. It's also coincided with noticing fashion excess at a fundraiser, at secondhand clothing fundraiser. I bought 30 shirts for $60 at the end of the evening. And it just, see, the shirts, that's how I was doing it, buying them and then making the bottoms. You know, you don't always have to make everything from scratch. You can engage with what's in the market already. So I rediscovered op shops and started looking at what was going on, noticing that the synthetic fiber components was increasing. In 2014, I did a Sew It Again year, so a whole year of blogging and upcycling. That was part of my setting up Textile Beat just as a place to advocate for slow clothing as antidote to fast fashion. That's where I ended up. And that Sew It Again year was really pivotal. Apart from researching a whole lot, that became material for my book that I ended up putting out in 2017. It also kind of was a platform that I could stand on and say, well, look, hey, you know, you don't have to keep buying things. You can mend them, you can adapt them. And I really started chopping up clothes, which was something that wasn't really done. You know, you sort of valued them the way they were. But if you're not wearing them and you find them in an op shop, well, they're yours kind of to do with what you like. That was my view. It was about the materials, not wasting them, but one of the garments that I wear a lot now, my red dress, my
Yep.
silk dress, is made from 5 garments that 4 I found gathered in op shops, and one was from my own wardrobe. And I just found I wasn't wearing it because it was just an off the shoulder top. So I filleted all of them into pieces, squares and rectangles, and then sewed them together into the geometric dress. And I find that really works for my shape because I just like casual style. I don't like to be too closed in. I like easy care things that are loose, therefore you don't have to wash them a lot. And that conserves the fibers really,
Mhm.
as well as saving your own labor. You know, my weight has always sort of fluctuated up and
Yeah.
down a bit. So it's nice to have things that you don't have to worry too much about whether you have the dessert or not.
And the Sew It Again project, that got recognised too for the work that you did.
Yes,
Yes.
that was actually from the Queensland Media Awards for that social media campaign. Yeah, that was really good because it was kind of recognition from my peers. It kind of also, I guess, drew attention to me as a person to speak out about these things because I'm not from fashion. I'm not from a fashion background,
Mm.
and that meant that I could speak my truth, what I observed was going on. And
Yeah.
it was really at a time where all of the ethical issues around fashion were not really talked about. I mean, certainly the Rana Plaza
Yes.
collapse in 2013 opened a window onto that, and there was a lot more awareness. But I think because I didn't have any vested interests, I was just speaking as a regular wearer of
Mm.
clothes, but also someone who believes in having skills and agency, not just around my wardrobe, but with everything in life. Like it's great to be able to feel as if you've got capacity to do things for yourself. And I
Mm.
think in this world where everything is sort of delivered on a plate for us, it's actually nice to be able to use your hands and adapt things and be engaged because it means that you're sort of mindful as well and you think a bit more about everything. One of the problems in having that is you're always saving things. Oh yes, I can use that one day and oh I can use that. So it's actually sort of like managing the stash becomes part of the issue.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, over recent years, there are things like fabric swaps and clothing swaps. They've always been around, I think, but they're getting in front of people's eyes more through social media.
Yeah, and I think the other big factor that I noticed too is that the stigma's gone. I know when I first stepped out and talked on ABC radio in an interview about how I wear secondhand clothes and I sew, like people were saying to me, I just sort of felt a bit of judgment, you might say.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas now it's more certainly wearing secondhand and sustainable. You meet a lot of people who wear that as a badge of honor now. That's actually a good thing. Whereas back in the day, it used to be that you only wore secondhand if you couldn't afford to buy the new. So I think that's partly why it's out there. And also the sheer volume of clothes that are around now and being able to get more variety when you shop secondhand.
Yeah.
You've got clothes across a number of decades often available. Whereas, if you go and try and find something new, there's only a certain number of styles. And also, because I guess marketers are trying to keep the price down, the garments that are available now, a lot of them are so simply made and quickly made that you don't get anything with a lot of detailing or beautiful shell buttons much. I mean, sometimes they are there, certainly in the better quality ranges and therefore the more expensive ranges. I just think shopping secondhand enables you to engage in the whole diversity and also try out your style as well. I'm a little bit about redonating. You might get carried away one day and, find 3 lovely linen things and realize, well, actually, do I really need it? So, it's good to be able to donate it back then and just put it back through the system and it fundraises again for the charities that do such good work with the op shops.
It does, doesn't it? Shall we jump into the Churchill Fellowship? What was that all about? How did you get involved?
I guess it was just over time. Um, you build up a repertoire and have experiences and realize that by the time I applied for the Churchill Fellowship in 2019, I'd actually been able to document that I'd done 660 workshops, medias, talks around Australia on
Mm.
this topic.
Mm.
And I was fortunate enough to have a referee in Craig Rucastle who did
Oh, yeah.
ABC War on Waste.
Yes.
And in his reference, he kind of said that, well, Jane has to travel because there's no solutions in Australia. So Churchill Fellowships are all about funding Australians to go overseas and learn and then bring back the information and share locally. So I won it in 2019, but I couldn't travel in 2022 because of COVID.
Mm.
So when I eventually did, my sweep, I went to America and the UK mainly, a little bit in New Zealand. I had wanted to go to Japan and Europe, but I just curtailed that to keep things simple. It was wonderfully affirming for me. I think that was the thing about the Churchill Fellowship. So you travel for 2 months and meet people who are working in your space. And because of social media, I had been aware of a lot of these people already from Australia, but it was really great to meet people like Sonia Phillips in San Francisco, Rebecca Burgess from Fibre Shed, and on the East Coast, Katrina Roderbau was fantastic. I met Otto von Busch, who's a associate professor in fashion in New York at Parsons School. And it was very interesting for him to talk about. It was the first time I'd thought about what I was doing was coming from a place of privilege because I thought I was using secondhand clothes and just making do, modern making do, and all of that. But he said, well, actually, it's a privilege because you've got skills and you're at a stage in your life. Like, I'd never followed fashion. Like, it
Mm.
wasn't something I let go of. I
Yeah.
just never kind of got into that. So I'd never thought of it as being privilege. But with Otto, and then when I went to the UK, there was another young woman I met there who also spoke about it as privilege because you've got skills for a start, and those skills you undervalue them when you just learn them from seeing things being done. But I do have a sewing machine, but I've also started doing a lot more by hand because that means everybody can do it.
Yeah.
You don't need the sewing machine. It takes time. So if you're hyper busy earning to get food on the table,
Yeah.
well, obviously you can't really do that. You've also got to have space to store stuff, to have a stash, to hold the threads, to be able to buy the threads. Almost everything I buy either from secondhand, the craft shop type of place,
Yeah.
or thrift shop, or like it's. I never really go to a shop and buy the very best at full price. Like it doesn't just. I don't know. It just don't work like that. But being able to shop around and hold things when you see them, that's a privilege as well. So
Mm.
it was quite interesting. The other fabulous thing about my Churchill Fellowship was meeting Professor Kate Fletcher in the UK. Kate coined the term slow fashion more than 20 years ago, and she's written a number of books on the topic. When she gave me her latest, which is Earth Logic, Fashion Action Research Plan, she's actually subsequently written more, but that particular one, when I read it, Earth Logic talks about the new learning we need to transform fashion.
Mm.
And that is really about skills, going back to natural dyeing, all those sort of traditional kind of things
Yep.
that are grounded in the ethics of permaculture. The ethics are earth care, people care, fair share. And I had in my COVID layover, I'd actually done a permaculture course in Australia. It's 16 weeks, and permaculture was developed 50 years ago by Australians in response to industrial agriculture. And it was all about working with nature, only using as much as you need, producing no waste, all these sort of what I just call old-fashioned
Mm.
common sense values.
Yeah.
And so that was 50 years ago in Australia. And now here was Kate Fletcher talking about the use of permaculture ethics in response to what is industrial fashion. I found that was kind of like a bit of a full circle moment for me to realize that actually it's just common sense and we have to think more about what we're doing, not wasting and thinking that everything, that all those traditional values, really, common sense values of around conservation and planetary boundaries. We're the ones that can create the change, and we just need to, listen more, think more before we take wasteful action.
What I've seen on your website is I think a lot of the learning that you picked up through the fellowship, you've got a lot of charts to show how we're faring, how various other countries are faring as well.
Because I'm just a one man band, I
Yeah.
haven't sort of updated
No,
a
I
lot of
wasn't asking
information,
that.
but I think it's much more commonly out there now that
Yeah.
a lot like there's apparently enough clothing in the world to clothe the next six generations. So really, we don't need anything new. And if we look around our own homes, most people that are doing reasonably well in places like Australia and New Zealand, we don't really want for anything. It's
Mm.
just this desire for modernity and having something new and fresh. But when you can dig into the back of your wardrobe and get something out and think, oh, I haven't worn that for a while. How can I freshen that up?
Mm.
Then, I mean, that's a great thing to be able to do. And having a few skills is what we need. You see, because, there's sort of an element of the feminist era here that we kind of thought for a while that we would just be professionals and we could outsource everything. We
Mm.
didn't need to worry about knowing about domestic kind of skills, sewing, goodness me. But in reality, it gives us a great sense of agency and well-being if we can fix our own things or tweak our own things. It gives us a sense of ownership. And also now with all of our mental health problems, the stresses of the world, it's actually a good thing to be able to escape into working with your hands and learning new skills because that meets our psychosocial needs. And on that point, I'd really like to say that one of the people that I'm helping learn to sew is my daughter-in-law, who's a GP and a very high functioning GP, stressful days. And she just loves coming home and sewing on the machine. She never really learnt. She had a little, experience in grade eight or whatever at school on a machine. School machines don't always work. So that wasn't successful for her. She didn't see it in her own family, but I've been able to give her a spare machine because I did not need two. I only need one. And I find materials for her and take them down. And it's just so exciting to see her go on that journey of learning to make things and got a little boy. And so she's making the Christmas stockings and the quilts and library bags for him and, the little other family friends and that. So it's really quite lovely to be able to do that, to share something as simple as sewing, which is really what in a professional world we were kind of guided away from those kind of things, to be more high flyers. But there's Shay as a GP, like she's got the career, but she's also enjoying exploring handmade as well. And of course, there's lots of different ways to do handmade. It's not just about your wardrobe and clothing, but it can also be gardening and other sorts of making.
Yeah.
Cooking, of course, is an
Yeah.
obvious one too. Just in the cooking line, can I just share what I'm doing at the moment?
Yeah.
I'm using, I got these slow, because I'm always at op shops. So I've got two slow cookers that are
Right.
the oval ones, and I'm actually using them, and they've got the crockery insert.
Mhm.
That's where I'm doing my natural dyeing at the moment. I'm putting them in there and simmering them for a long time. And I've got these old wool blankets and I'm cutting them into strips and putting leaves. I live on North Stradbroke Island now, so I've been gathering the leaves from one of the koala trees. The swamp mahogany I've found is good. And yeah, I'm just making some little sewing kits for my friends and family members out of these dyed wool blanket cut-ups that I'm cooking slowly in the pot. So it's good.
I'm only laughing because it's such a joy to hear of what it is you're doing with these
Oh, that's
cookery
good.
pots.
Yes, because I mean you can get them for $10 or $15. Like, but I guess they're probably using a bit of electricity when I think about the slow cooking of them, but they hold the heat a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just also something that you can just put them in there and forget about them for a while. So it's not a high time consumption
Mm.
thing that you have
Yep.
to do to pay, hang around and pay attention and, the pot's not boiling over or anything because you can just keep it on low.
They're only used for that purpose. You're not using them
Oh
as well
yes,
for
no,
food,
they're
right?
no. I've got one that I've had for about 15 years that I just upstairs. So that's the one for cooking in. Mm.
So,
Although with that crockery inserts, you could wash it and and cook in it if you wanted to, but I guess again it's that privilege of having the space under the
yes.
house to
Yeah.
put things away and keep them to buy them affordably and then store them and then just use them when you want to.
Mm.
So, mm,
Yeah, more things to store.
yeah, that's definitely it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of the way that I live my life. And sometimes I wonder whether it's kind of like, well, I can see the other side where people just get rid of things.
Mm.
You just get rid of it and you buy what you need. And that's how a lot of people want to live. That's okay. But I guess probably because I hark back to growing up on the farm and great grandma and all those traditional great grandma lived with us and it's just sort of old-fashioned sustainable practice is where I like to find myself now. That's what I'm doing and sharing and, maybe inspiring other people to adopt part of it or the part that they like in their life. With my red dress, I wore it the other day. I was MC at Churchill Fellows Association dinner
Yep.
in Brisbane. And it was just great. Like a couple of people came up after and like the CEO and she said, "Oh, I had to go and buy a new dress the other day because I was caught somewhere without a wardrobe." And as she thought, now what would Jane buy? Like what, so it's actually, you're getting people thinking more before
Yeah.
they purchase. And that's a huge thing to just think more rather than race in. And often if things are on special, the stores are trying to get rid of them because they're
Mm.
not in demand for some reason. In my slow clothing manifesto, which is readily available on my website, it's actually just thinking more, buying natural fibers, trying to buy quality, buy one once and wear it a lot. Just having a few, working out what your style is. And that may be through doing a lot of thrifting, but you get to a point where you understand how you want to present yourself. So it's quality, natural, just having a few local buying our natural fibers or from local makers is a really good thing. There's a lot of slow fashion, small brands around to support. And then caring for things is really important. Not washing so much, washing by hand if you need to, sponging whenever you get a stain instead of washing the whole thing, hanging to dry rather than drying. Although with apartment living, you see, this is another part of privilege. With apartment living, you can't easily hang dry
Mm.
because we lived in an apartment for a year when we were changing over our house. And I came to understand that I did use the dryer a whole lot. So caring for things, making if you can, reviving, like if you can find it secondhand, well, that's great. Also adapting, like learning those skills to make it fit for you. If something's wrong with the neck or whatever, you can actually make some changes. And then salvaging, like ultimately, if you've got lovely natural fibers, they can just end up in the ground, in your
Pretty much.
compost, if
Yeah.
you're lucky enough to have a compost, you see, that's the other thing. And I know when I lived in that city apartment, we couldn't even compost our scraps. I mean, that was just made me realize, oh, this is not the place for me. I needed to be somewhere where you can put things in the ground.
Mm.
And I love the idea of the fibers returning to the elements of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, because that's when you know you're truly doing part of the life cycle. We are nature working, as my permaculture teacher used to say. And, if you just think in natural cycles about nature and not using too many chemicals or, harsh washing things, like it's all got to be good for us. And
Yeah.
particularly now with understanding that two-thirds of our clothing and all of our household items, cushions, doonas, all that kind of stuff, so much of it is polyester now.
Mhm. Yep.
So up to three-quarters. So it's derived from petroleum and it's also shedding microplastic particles into our atmosphere in our homes
Mm.
and on our clothes, and it's in our bodies, and we don't really understand the health implications, but just thinking about it is enough to put me off and think, well, we don't need to have like minimize plastic. I do still have some. I've realized that I like to swim, do laps for fitness, and, you need to have lycra swimmers.
Mhm.
So I have worn wool, but I didn't get enough mileage out of it. It was great for a certain number of wears, and then I found there was too much turnover, whereas my other togs are lasting 3 and 4 years
Mm.
rather than 3 months. So,
Yeah.
there's horses for courses, but I think minimizing plastic is a really good way to go.
I've been watching where you've been going. You said that, before when you put your Churchill Fellowship application in, you were able to say, you've taught, 600, you've taught at
Workshops and
least,
talks and medias,
yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Whereas,
Mm,
so I've been watching where you've been going on social media, and you were in Perth, you were in the Blue Mountains, you're back
mm.
up, you're in Canberra. How do you manage to get to all of those places and still, with your manifesto, do you pick and choose based on what it is that audience wants to hear from you? How do you figure it all out?
Well, October was a very busy month, I
Yes.
have to say. I hadn't, like that was a lot. And they all just happened to arrive at the same time. So I'm conscious that every time I travel, we've got, a carbon footprint attached to
Yep.
that. I did love going to Western Australia because that was an opportunity at Fibres West. I
Yes.
had a group of there were 10 tutors, and each of us had 12 students.
Mhm.
And I got to teach the geometric dress. And it's the first time I've had such a long period of time, like 5 days is a really big commitment on the
Mm.
part of the attendees
Mm.
and the group and the tutor too, of course. But it was wonderful being with people that were so on the page, like they were so interested in upcycling. Everyone was there
Mm.
because they wanted to have this sense of agency and to be able to make lots of different things using bits and pieces. And almost everyone came along with salvaged materials, to say, from their own wardrobe or, thrift shops and around the place. And that was really satisfying. So I really enjoyed that. I mainly go just where I'm invited to go.
Okay.
It's not like as if I'm actively seeking anything. With the Blue Mountains, that was the council having a sustainable textile symposium, wanting to start the conversation
Yep.
about how to do it differently.
Mm.
And then Canberra was the Rural Women's Award. I was the Queensland runner-up in 2010, and I've been engaged in that network ever since. It's Agri Futures Australia. And in a way, that's where I found voice back there in 2010 that has led me to where I am now. And I'm actually the Queensland chair of that award now. So that's why I
Mm.
had to go to Canberra. And, but November and December, I'm pretty well around home. And, I've got 3 children and 5 grandchildren. So there's a bit of that. There's a bit of gardening. But I do have the luxury now of picking and choosing what I need to do. I did feel I was at capacity in October. That was sort of like four big things was plenty to last for a little while. Mm.
Yeah. I thought you managed it really well. I was just curious to see, what is Jane doing today? And that's how I was able to figure that one
I
out.
don't always post everything either. That's the
No.
thing. I don't post everything, and sometimes there's much more that you could do in terms of posting. But I'm also conscious that I'm in two minds about social media. Like it was great when it arrived because it enabled us to be self-publishers.
Yep.
But I'm not so sure now with all the manipulation that goes on whether I really like it. So I'm mainly just focusing on posting about things that I need to share about rather than too much personal stuff or just taking up time, because it does absorb a whole lot of time when you're posting on social media. So
It does.
everything's a balance, isn't it?
It is when you're a one
Everything in
person.
balance.
Yeah.
Just enough, doing just enough.
Just as an explanation, Sober 50 is a group that I do some social media for. They've been going since 2018, and it's to raise the visibility of older sewers in social media.
Great community now, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was Judith who started the account, and Sandy Beish has been leading the editors. I'm one of them. I do 1 week a month. It's 56,000 followers with 3 posts
Wow.
a week.
Mm.
And look, the key thing there is, even though social media, especially Instagram, keeps changing, we at least do a lot of work to make sure that people understand, okay, this has changed, because I do tutorials for them. And also Sandy does a lot of education because she's from education background. So, you're more than welcome to ask any questions or see if we can give you a hand, Jane.
Oh,
Yep.
thank you. Yes, and Judith, I gather, was on North Stradbroke Island earlier
Yes.
this year, and
Yep.
her nephew is our electrician here, who was here just last Friday putting in a new stove for us because the old one was very, very broken down, and it was a classic thing. It was here in this old house when we bought it, and one of the elements conked out, and we
Yeah.
thought, oh, well, let's find out what it would cost to replace the element and keep the oven going. And it was $300 to do that, and it was $700 to buy a new one.
Hmm.
And so we ended up just buying a new one because this was quite an old piece of equipment, but
Mm,
it speaks to the cost of repairing things, doesn't it? But
it does.
yeah, well done on So Over 50. I think that's once wonderful what you've done. And this, just on AM last night, there was talk of Daisy, who's DIY Daisy is her
Yes.
book. So that's the
Yep.
younger generation.
Yep.
They were talking about her community of engagement as well. And it's really exciting to see so much growth around sewing. Very exciting because it's fairly recent, I think, that we've had this uplift, isn't it?
It is.
Yes, and of course you've interviewed Mary Morton, who's now got the book out, Stitch It, Don't Ditch It. And I
Yep.
met Mary in my on my Churchill Fellowship. Yes, it's a fabulous book, isn't it?
It is.
You know, certainly ideal for people who are starting on the journey. That's what I found. It was very clear and very detailed without being stodgy, like with the pictures are there, you could quickly engage, or if you
Mm.
wanted more detail, it was there. So, yes, well done there on that publication.
So it was Mary and Jeanna when I interviewed them earlier this year, and I said, "Who else should I interview?" They're going, "Oh, da da da," and you were one of them. I said, "Okay, I'll
Oh,
invite Jane. Don't worry."
yes,
So
yeah,
they'll be
yeah,
excited that
that's
you're on the
great.
podcast as well.
That's good.
Small
Thank you.
world. No worries. Jane, before we finish up, what's the one thing you'd like our listeners to take stock of or do after listening to you on the podcast today?
Everyone can do something. And if everyone does a little something, then eventually things change. We all can be pebbles in the pond and creating a big ripple for change, because it's still really concerning that there's so many cheap clothes coming into play. And I don't think companies are going to stop making them
No.
until people stop buying them. And I know your community is one of sewists, like we're all probably speaking from the same hymn book, really.
Mm.
But somehow we've got to try and influence change to stop people buying things they haven't even touched or tried on, and so often you hear stories of disappointment. Like I would never buy a garment online because, you don't know what you're getting, really. There's lots of stories of disappointment of people buying things, and it was nothing like that it was set out to be. So I think just making careful, considered decisions and trying to role modeling a different way. And actually, just thinking about the older way. What would grandma do? You know, but that's where we need to be. Yes, we can have conveniences, but with convenience culture, the byproduct of that is waste, and also being really careful about the hidden plastics and everything. We all get caught like that, but it's just trying to make some change through personal actions. That's what I'd recommend and thought I'd leave you with.
Jane, thank you for coming onto the podcast today and for being here for Sober 50 as well.
Oh, thanks, Maria. My pleasure. I'll see you later, Maria. Thank you for the conversation. That was lovely.
This episode of So Organised Style podcast of Sober 50 was both video and audio produced by me, Maria Theoharis, in my sewing room with permission of Jane Milburn OAM, and sound by Kaneef on YouTube. Many thanks for the ongoing monthly support of the podcast Patreon contributors. Their paid Patreon membership enables me to create these video and audio podcasts for you for free. You can subscribe to So Organised Style podcast, but with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps and on YouTube. And yes, if you live in Australia and decide to buy your own Mimi Queen, I'll be your body scanner. Make sure you go back and listen to our free Sober 50 podcast episodes on So Organised Style podcast. Direct message Sandy and the editors of Sober 50 on Instagram to contribute to the ongoing posts and challenges the team promotes to the community. I look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Have a Merry Christmas. Stay safe, everyone.